This is Pastor Nathan. Welcome to the Sitting With It podcast. Each week I sit down with someone from my congregation to discuss the past Sunday's sermon. I hope this helps all of us to go deeper with the sermon, thinking about it, digesting it, and living it out in our lives. Let's get into it.
I have Jay with me here this morning, and we are going to be talking about the sermon from this past Sunday, which Pastor Tracy actually preached. It was the final sermon from Philippians, and it was a pretty long passage that we were looking at. But essentially this idea of being a rejoicing person and how that impacts who we are, our relationship with God, with others, how we view life. And there was a lot of points, so we'll see where all we go with what we have to talk about. But I'm glad that I have Jay here to talk with me about the sermon. So Jay, as you listen to the sermon, as you've been thinking about it, what maybe were some main takeaways that you had?
Well, I appreciated the way that Tracy laid it out with the 12 takeaways that we had. That the rejoicing person is a gentle person, reasonable person, a moderate and fair person, a God-aware person, a non-anxious person, peace-filled person, giving thanks, or good thinking, practicing person, a caring, content, and a rich and a grace-filled person. I really appreciated the way Tracy laid that out on the 12 points, kind of explained all of them, and I like the way he gave the illustration of, I forget the fella's name at the golf course, but I really like illustrations, and so I appreciated Tracy's sermon in that he gave illustrations and really laid the points out that were really points that were easy to take. So
yeah, was there one in particular that maybe stood out to you more than others?
Good thinking, I guess, kind of stood out a little bit in that I guess I would take that as using common sense. Sometimes you just look around and it's like, some people are really smart, but it just seems like they have no common sense. So, and I know I'm what I would say a low IQ person, so I need to rely on the Holy Spirit of God first, and hopefully, and I expect that He's going to give me good common sense, and I really try to be that kind of a person, a rejoicing person, because a rejoicing person is a lot easier to work with than what Pastor Tracy called Eeyore person. Always down and looking on the negative side, and I really do try to be a rejoicing person. I've worked around people that were kind of more like Eeyores. It's just a lot easier to work and be around people that are rejoicing people, and I try to be that. But at the same time, on the farm, there's so many times when things go wrong, and the size of the farm we have and the amount of help we have and all, there's plenty of times when things can and do go wrong, and boy, it's hard to be a rejoicing person in those situations, I'll tell you.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that's right, the whole idea of joy and happiness is more based on our circumstances, and joy is something that comes from inside. That's easy to say, but then it's tested when we're in those situations where we are kind of under fire, right? That's been the theme of the series, and when things aren't going well. And so, yeah, I wonder what helps you when things are going wrong on the farm and things aren't going the way you planned or hoped for. What helps you to kind of come back to being more of that rejoicing person?
Well, verse 9, I can do everything through Him who gives me the strength. Verse 13, that kind of stood out to me that I have a lot of times in my life thought that, I can do everything through Christ who strengthens me, and I kind of like the way Tracy pointed that out, that, yeah, I can't do everything. I feel that he pointed out that he'll give us the strength to get through the things that, in those times when things do go wrong, we can rely on him for the strength to get through it. And the way to get through it, because there's sometimes it's like, how am I ever going to get through this? And the other thing I thought of and went back to in Paul's in Romans 8. Romans 8:28 is my favorite verse in the Bible, and I've relied on that promise a lot of times in my life. And I kind of feel that was Paul saying that, and I think he said in this scripture somewhere that live on the promises that you have heard from me. And I wanted to go back to Romans 8:26 through 28, and this here is kind of where my life has been. In the same way, the Spirit helps us in our weakness. And I feel I'm a very weak person. I've wanted to make myself feel like I'm strong, but in a lot of ways I'm weak. We do not know what we ought to pray for, but the Spirit himself intercedes for us with groans that words cannot express. And he who searches our hearts knows the mind of the Spirit, because the Spirit intercedes for the saints in accordance with God's will. And 28, my favorite verse, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. And that I can rest on that promise, that when everything's gone wrong, that he works through those things to make me a better person and a better follower of Christ. That brought me back to that passage, because somewhere there in these passages it said, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. And I try to focus on all the excellent and praiseworthy things that God has put in my life, and especially this Thanksgiving season, when I can think about, I try to think about them all the time. Praise God for the family he has given me, the wonderful wife, the children, the 2 sons that have been willing to give their lives working with me on the farm. And sometimes it's hard, but somehow God gives us grace to keep going. I'm also so thankful for Shirley and her willingness to be a helper on the farm. And the way I've seen God work in my life, as I reflect back on the years and the different situations I've been in. Back in, it was in 1999, when our milking parlor was, we have a carousel milking parlor that goes around, and if it doesn't go around, we can't milk cows. And we were having trouble. The platform was breaking up, and we weren't sure. We looked into building a new parlor, and the way everything's set up, really would have been hard to build a new parlor and have it ready in a couple days, because the cows got to be milked twice a day. And the way that God worked in that situation was that the kids were at a fair down in our Grange fair, and a girl from New Jersey was asking them about milking cows and how they milked, and they said they had a carousel milking parlor that we milked in, and they said it was really giving us problems. And the girl says, "Yeah, my dad had a carousel milking parlor too, but he don't milk in his anymore, and it just sits there." And they said, "Well, you think he'd be interested in selling it?" And she'd ask him, he said, yeah, he was interested in selling it. And it was the parlor, the platform was all in good shape. And we went and looked at it. It looked good. And John Lipinski and other help, some brothers helped, and we got that moved and took our old platform out in one day and replaced it. From the morning to the night, we had a different platform in and had the cow. We're milking the cows again that night, and that was by the grace of God that happened, and saved a lot of money and answered a lot of prayers. And same thing happened again in 22. We were then that parlor, that platform was shot again, and we were in the same place. And then, we had talked with the neighbor. Our neighboring farmer had stopped farming back in 2000, and that parlor was exactly the same, only 2 miles away from us, and that parlor was exactly the same. And it sat there for 20 years, no cows being milked on it. And we were at the same place where we couldn't barely get the parlor to go around again, and we had asked him several times about a land investor had bought the farm, and we'd asked him about buying that platform and parlor from him. No, they weren't interested in selling it. And then we were to a point where we couldn't hardly do anything anymore, and then we called again, and here the one fellow that was saying no all the time had passed away, and they said, yeah, we'll sell it. and we moved that parlor over in another day, and we were back, and the Lord has blessed us so much with that parlor. It's so much nicer to get around, and it's only by the grace of God.
Yeah, and as you're telling those stories, I'm just thinking of, now you can look back and see how everything worked out and how God took care of you through it. But when you're in the middle of it, you can't always see that. And I think that's some of, kind of what Paul's talking about here is he's in the middle of it, right? He's still in prison. He doesn't know how it's all going to end out. And we know the reality is the story doesn't end super great from a human perspective, because Paul does end up getting killed for the faith. He is killed. But what Paul would say to us is, well, no, that still ends up good because of the resurrection, right? Because of Jesus.
Right.
And so, like, in a sense, we get this opportunity to know the end of the story when we're still in the middle of it, because Jesus already kind of lived the end of the story. Mm-hmm. And so we can see, on the other side of death, there's resurrection. And so then whatever it is we're going through, we can look for where's God at work in the middle of that, even when things feel like they're not going great.
Right.
I know I've shared this story before, but it kept rolling through my head as Tracy was preaching on Sunday. So one time that I kind of experienced and lived this was when Eulalia was born. Our plan was to go to a birth center, and so we were driving down 309 towards Bryn Athyn. That's where the birth center was. And Dana doesn't really like hospitals. Didn't want to have a baby in a hospital. Wasn't interested in that. And then. So as we were driving down, though, we were on the phone with the midwife, and she had 2 other women who needed to go to the hospital. So she was at Einstein. So we had to go to Einstein Medical Center to have Eulalia. And Dana was strep B positive, which is kind of, I guess, a normal thing that happens sometimes. And when that happens, in the birth center, we could have gone home after 4 hours. But in the hospital, we had to stay for 2 days, 48 hours. Mm-hmm. And so we didn't have a bag packed. We weren't expecting that. We thought we're having a baby and going back home.
Right.
And instead we end up in the hospital for 2 nights, all the way down to Einstein. And so we're not close to home. Nobody can come visit us. We don't have anything that we need. And it's our first child, which is just, its own whirlwind of, like, she wasn't, nursing right. And we had no idea what's going on. And so, the first day it was like every time that somebody checked in, hey, how's it going? It's like, well, we don't have anything. We were telling them all the things that were going poorly. And it was about a day into it that I said to Dana, I said, you know what? I'm realizing, like, we're having this terrible experience, but we keep telling everybody about all the bad things, but there's all these good things too. And I said, well, what if we started actually telling the fact that, I mean, Eulalia was almost born on the side of the road. Deacon then was born on the side of the road. But it was about 20 minutes that we made it to the hospital until she was born. So I was like, why don't we tell anybody that? Like, well, we made it to the hospital, thank God. We had a lactation consultant who came in the middle of the night and was helping Dana for like 2 hours. And I'm like, why don't we tell people about that? Like, these things we're thankful for. So we started, and it doesn't mean burying our head in the sand or ignoring the bad things, but we started just telling people the ways that we saw God at work and the things we were thankful for. And by the end of our stay, we were having a great time. And it's like, well, we have all this food taken care of for us. We don't have to cook food for us at home, even though it's not really what we wanted.
You weren't ready to go home?
Well, we were still ready to go home. We were ready for new clothes. But it was crazy to me how much the way that we talked about it, even in the moment, changed our experience of it. We went from being Eeyore to being rejoicing people.
Yeah.
And it actually changed the experience for us, even in the moment. So I wonder, what else maybe did you think of from the passage or the service, or what are other things that stood out to you?
Well, another thing that stood out to me with Katie's opening, where she said sometimes you just got to suck it up and swallow your pride and accept the fact that you need help. And made me reflect back on times when I was too proud to accept help, and I said, no, we'll be all right. And looking back on it, like, that cost me. I had to take out some loans sometimes to pay where the church would have been happy to help me, but I was too proud to accept the help and ended up having to pay for years, and probably put me behind for a long time. And I really do feel that sometimes the good Lord says you need to get some help. Mm-hmm. And God's people are willing to help, and they will be blessed if they help you.
Yeah, there's this saying, it's more blessed to give than to receive. And there's some truth to that, right? Like, when we're in a position to be able to give, that's great. But something that I've thought about, sort of like you just said, is when we're in the position that we need to receive, we actually are blessing other people by letting them be the blessing to us.
Yeah.
How about, I wonder if there's anything as you've been reflecting on the sermon, or that maybe feels a little unclear to you, or you're like, what is it? I don't really get this, or things maybe you disagreed with as Tracy was talking through some of it.
I don't really know of anything that, how can you disagree with any of this? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's sermons sometimes that I do disagree with it, but I don't think from this passage that I really can find anything I disagreed with, or I really felt things were pretty clear too, with the 12 points, the way it was laid out. I mean, it can't get a whole lot clearer, I don't think.
Yeah, he just went verse by verse through it. And there were times where I thought, man, he's got 12. Are we going to make it through all this?
Yeah,
but he got it
in the beginning.
Yeah. He pulled it all together. So, yeah, well, how about, I wonder, as you think about, we've been talking about kind of in the midst of difficult situations, how God has worked things out for you. And that struggle of trying to be a rejoicing person in the midst of difficulty. So how do you see this maybe changing the way that you kind of approach life, or what are the things that's going to make you think about differently in the coming weeks?
Well, I'm certainly gonna try and grow in being more of a rejoicing person, and I feel I have grown in that 30 years ago, I certainly probably was more like the Eeyore when things went bad. I mean, I think I've always tried to be a rejoicing person, but when things go bad, I wasn't 30 years ago. And I think my son kind of even said, it's almost like whatever, It's like when things go bad, I'm like, well, there's nothing I can help you. We can fix them. Or we can sit here and complain about them. We can't, we got to fix them, Mm-hmm. And the good Lord's going to give us the strength and the wisdom to know how to fix this.
Yep.
And so that's, I guess, what I'm going to continue to try and grow in. And hopefully my children and grandchildren will see that in me and try to be more like more like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, I always say to my kids, be a worker, not a whiner.
Yeah.
That's the phrase in our house.
Good. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yep.
Yeah.
You probably shouldn't say that to Josh and Jason. Maybe I'm a little too old for that. Give it another 10 years, the kids will be saying that to me. So.
I am so thankful for the grandchildren, the children and grandchildren we have. I tell you, Zach, he's just been such a blessing. I was never real big on the homeschool idea, but after seeing how you turned out, you were homeschooled, and Zach, he's been homeschooled for 3 years now. I guess he's in his third year, but I am just amazed at how smart he is, and by 10:30, 11 o'clock, he's done with his schoolwork, and he's ready to help us on the farm, and what a blessing that has been. I'll tell you, that really has made our life easier, and I'm so thankful for that.
Yep. Yeah, by the time I was in 7th, 8th grade, I did about 2 hours of school a day, all the way through.
I'm thinking, man, we wasted all that time, but I'm not sure I could have. I'm not sure I could have. It could have worked out for me like it did for Zach. I'll tell you. And he is smart. I'll tell you.
Yeah.
I think you got to be a pretty smart person for it to work out.
Yeah.
Right. And so.
Yeah. Well, anything else that you have? Any other reflections from the sermon or on the idea of rejoicing?
Not really. I think I'm pretty much it.
Okay. Well, thanks for joining me, and I always appreciate your stories and just the energy and joy that you do bring. And it was interesting. I was thinking about sitting down with you. When I think of a rejoicing person, you would be actually one of the people that I would think of, which I didn't. It didn't line. There was no plan in having you this week necessarily on the topic. It just worked out. We connected after church a couple weeks ago.
And
lined it up because I needed to get some people.
And I hadn't even looked what we were going to be talking about.
Yeah, same. Yep. Yeah. So, but yeah, I think you're quick to bring laughter, and you're always looking for the positive side, and especially when I think of you, you are always looking for where's God at work in the midst of this. And I think that's the key to being a rejoicing person. So, yeah. So thanks for joining me. And
well, thank you, Nathan, and I really appreciate this time that we've spent, and it's made me focus more on the sermon too, maybe than I would have, take notes and such. So I think this is a good thing you're doing, and I hope you can continue it.
Yeah, good. Well, thanks.